In today's tier list, I will be ranking all 86 armor heroes from SSS all the way down to D. I'll be basing my rankings on how well these heroes perform as far savior units. I will mostly be considering ether raids and summoner duels, as those are the two most difficult game modes. Now before we jump in, let's go over the criteria I use to rank them. Now obviously a far save tank will not have all these effects, but these are desirable effects that can make a far save much more powerful. I'm not going to go through all the effects, but some of the most important ones are a way to deny follow-ups, guaranteed the unit's own follow-up attacks, the guard effect to deny specials, and neutralizing the armor weakness. These effects will either be granted via the weapon or through skills, but the more of these effects a hero can get, typically the better fire save tank they will be. Last thing before we start is I will not be going over every hero on this tier list, as this video would last forever, so I'll be going over the general information by tier and jump into a more detailed analysis for the higher tiers. D tier is full of armor units who can be outperformed by heroes in the higher tiers. These heroes either lack unique weapons or have bad stat lines. In some cases both. Heroes like Sheena and Gwendolyn do have decent PRF weapons, but their attack stats are abysmal, which leads them to struggling to secure kills, especially if they need to run meta builds to ensure they don't die to meta threats like Duo Chrom. B tier is composed of armors that are reliant on inheritable weapons for the most part to play the role of far save tank. You may notice that there are a lot of green armors in this tier, and this is due to the fact that green far save units are the worst at the moment. This is mostly due to the presence of Duo Chrom in every single game mode, but it's also due to the lack of great inheritable weapons. Stout Axe is typically their best option as it can offer damage reduction, but the damage reduction is pierceable by Deadeye, and it's on the first hit, where Hardy Fighter will typically already have you covered. Other heroes in this tier have better stat lines than units in the D tier, but can still be outperformed by units in higher tiers. B tier is where we reach solid far save tanks. These far save tanks can do a solid job in game modes like ether raids, but they do have notable weaknesses. For example, many of them do not have PRF weapons, or have PRF weapons that have not aged amazingly. Others do not have access to the best inheritable weapons, or just have less than optimal stat lines. Then we also have healers such as Valentine's Lissa or Winter Sephiroth, who have great stat lines but unfortunately do not have access to offensive or defensive specials, which greatly holds them back. A tier is full of amazing save tanks that can do phenomenal in ether raids. All of these units have major advantages over heroes in the lower tiers, but they also have some weaknesses, such as less than optimal stat lines, less than great weapons, or they don't have access to Hardy Fighter, which becomes problematic in higher levels of play. First of all, we have Fallen Edelgard. Now Fallen Edelgard is a bit of a special case. I personally do not think she is great as a standard far save tank. This is largely due to Armored Wall's damage reduction only being in effect during the first combat in player or enemy phase. I think she does have one very solid role, which is far save insurance in a Gale Force team. This is essentially allows Fallen Edelgard to warp in, kill 3 units, and then protect your other units from any possible surviving range units, just in case you aren't able to corner a unit. Up next are our 2 mage save tanks, Halloween Ileana and Christmas Artur. They have a great stat line and great inheritable weapon options in the form of Amity Blooms Plus or Spider Plush. The major downside of using them is the lack of access to Hardy Fighter, unfortunately. After that, we have our bow save units, Ignatz and Faye. They have access to Reindeer Bow Plus, which can grant them guard, which is amazing, but just like the mages, the lack of access to Hardy Fighter holds them back from the higher tiers. Our next group is composed of dragons, but all these dragons are either reliant on inheritable weapons, or their PRF weapon is a bit outdated. Some examples of this are Winter Sothis and Nagi. The best of this group is Halloween Grima, who has a great preference weapon and solid stats. The major thing that keeps him from being top tier is that the healing from his weapon requires an offensive special, which means he can't use Hardy Fighter effectively, and keeps him from being usable in summoner duels. After that, we have a ton of axe save tanks. The main downside of these units is their color, unfortunately. First we have Valentine's Gustav, who is similar to the Stout Axe users down in C tier, but the major upside is he has special acceleration built into his weapon, as well as more damage reduction. Next up we have OG Hector and Valentine's Hector, who are so similar they're essentially the same unit. Both of these units can heal a ton from activating offensive specials, but just like Halloween Grima, they can't make good use of Hardy Fighter. The Hectors do have the advantage of a built-in Wrath effect though, which makes it easier to secure some kills. After that we have Legendary Hector, who is surprisingly much more bulky than most people give him credit for. His weapon offers a ton of stats, damage reduction, and a follow-up denial, which makes him a great save tank in AR with some proper support. Our last group in A tier is the Sword Armors. Rearm Lift's arcane weapon has made all sword armors significantly better. These sword units are great save tanks, but they do have some downsides compared to sword armors in higher tiers. First of all, Drog unfortunately has an outdated stat line, which can hold him back. On the other hand, Zelgius and Black Knight have to give up Black Luna to use the arcane weapon, and they also have low resistance stats compared to many other sword units, which can hold them back. The major upside is that they have solid speed stats, so in Ether raids it can be better to use a Londite as it frees up their A slot. While in Summoner duels, you can go the full Hardy Fighter build. We have finally reached S tier, and these save tanks are some of the best in the entire game. First, let's start off with Pirate Surtur, who is essentially just a blue version of Valentine's Gustav. The fact that he is blue makes him a better save tank with how the meta currently is. Picnic Flora and Valentine's Robin are the best ranged far saves in the game. Picnic Flora got an amazing refine. Her weapon offers beast effectiveness, massive amounts of stats, damage reduction, and even follow-up denial. Valentine's Robin, on the other hand, offers cooldown reduction, damage reduction, and stats, plus built-in healing for not only herself but her allies, which works great in the save ball. Once again, the major contributing factors keeping them from higher tiers is the inability to use Hardy Fighter, which is almost necessary for Summoner duels. Our only mythic on the list is going to be Duma. Duma got a great refine and remix, allowing him to be a powerful support via building destruction or a possible save tank for your AR team. The ability to combine team slots of a save tank and a mythic is massive for team building, but Duma is also just a great unit who can be difficult to take down as he can retaliate with a massive true damage counterattack. Ascendant Fjorm was a game changer when it came to saves. Her built-in Null Seed Disrupt against ranged units removed one of the main counters against saves, which were staff units and fire sweep effects. More importantly, she introduced Hardy Fighter, which has become a meta-defining skill. As a far save tank herself, she can be quite good in Ether raids, but she does have her problems. Her major problems are the lack of stats built into her weapon, which can lead to her being outsped, and her possible death if she doesn't one-shot the enemy back. Prevalence of Duochrome has also greatly reduced her effectiveness and has made her much less usable in Summoner duels. Even so, Fjorm can be a great far save for Ether raids if you can resist not following her off for Hardy Fighter. Winter Ephraim is one of the sleeper best saves in the game. His refined transformed Ephraim into a deadly enemy phase far saver. The combination of special acceleration and an enemy phase brave effect lets Winter Ephraim kill a ton of enemies in retaliation. It also lets him take full advantage of his Aegis Hardy Fighter build, as he can easily recharge the special. To end out our S tier are 3 more sword armor units. Honestly, they are all amazing save tanks and can do a wonderful job. The only thing holding them back from the higher tiers is that there are other heroes who can do their job just a little bit better. With the reliance of arcane weapons, most of the major changes just come down the stat lines. Zethiel is the best balanced free-to-play far save armor in the entire game, in my opinion, though there is one more free-to-play option that is a bit more specialized towards the current meta. Double S tier is full of amazing heroes who perform in both Ether raids and Summoner duels. Any of these units can be a great choice to invest into. What makes these units stand above their peers is their unique effects in their weapons or their optimized stat lines. Let's start off with our Dragon Brigade of save units. First we have Duo Ithune, our only unit in this tier that isn't new or recently refined. Duo Ithune offers a great stat line, penalty neutralization, and even follow-up denial. She also has a duo skill that can remove both of her weaknesses, which can be a great option in something like Summoner duels to either stall or let her win some matchups. Best part is she will eventually get a refine. Next up is Base Ithune, who just recently got refined. What makes her stand above similar units such as Valentine's Gustav or Pirate Surtur is her penalty neutralization, armor effectiveness, and her nature as a dragon, which means she can avoid things like Windsweep. Fallen Rhea is one of our newest save units and she can be quite powerful. In my honest opinion, I found her a bit underwhelming, but everyone else I've talked to loves her. Rhea's weapon allows for an extremely powerful counterattack. She also can get massive damage reduction and healing through her preference B skill, True Dragon Wall. The problems I have with Rhea is that while she can't deny the enemy's double, she also denies her own, which means if she doesn't one-shot, she can miss kills. The other problem is that her damage reduction is pierceable and it takes up her B slot where I'd prefer to run Hardy Fighter instead. Either way, Rhea can be a great unit for game modes like Ether raids. Legendary Tiki is one of our original dragon armors, and she has become amazing since her refine. Not only does she have a preference save skill that grants additional stats and 2 visible buffs, but she can also inflict a big attack penalty on the foe, which works well against meta specials like Lethality and Deadeye. The biggest factor that makes Tiki powerful is that she is a fast dragon armor, which is quite uncommon. This can often lead her to be able to deny offensive meta threats their doubles, which can completely flip matchups. Halloween Myrrh became a premier far save after her refine. Her weapon works extremely well with Hardy Fighter because it offers a massive 70% damage reduction against follow-up attacks, meaning Hardy Fighter can eat up the pre-charged specials like Lethality or Deadeye, and then the follow-up attack will do way less damage. Myr also has a big advantage of a guaranteed follow-up attack, which can make it easier for her to secure kills without relying on fighter skills that give her that double. Shell came out of literally nowhere and became one of the best far saves in the game with a refined due to its unique effect. It essentially puts a massive debuff on the foe's attack stat, which can drastically reduce their damage. The only thing to consider when it comes to Shell is that her attack debuff is based off visible stats, which means that investing into Shells via merges and Dragonflowers will definitely help her performance. Now we have the second of our Picnic sisters with Picnic Felicia. Picnic Felicia fills a great role as one of the few fast armors in the game. This allows her to deny the enemy's follow-up attacks even from quick meta threats. Her Refine also grants beast effectiveness, a ton of stats, and damage reduction. The only reason she is higher than Flora is due to her access to Hardy Fighter. The one downside I will mention is that her weapon has some overlap with Hardy Fighter, and the redundancy doesn't actually help her in any way when using that build. Brave Edelgard got a ridiculous Refine. The thing is, she was already an amazing unit before it, so now she's just completely ridiculous. Her weapon grants her up to 21 attack, defense, and resistance, a guard effect, movement better than any infantry unit, and warping. Her Preference B skill can grant a dual phase guaranteed follow-up attack and 80% damage reduction against follow-up attacks. Edelgard is just a complete powerhouse and can fit onto a ton of teams. Her biggest downside, I would argue, is that she is green, but in summoner duels that can be remedied to an extent by running Spallen's Shield to take away her armor weakness. Overall, she's just a great option as a far save unit, you just need to take some precautions against Duochrome. Valentine's Lucina is very similar to Picnic Felicia. She's a fast axe savior, but Lucina has some major advantages. The biggest one has to be her Preference Assist Future Vision. This allows Lucina to have a ton more mobility and also an extra action to stall in summoner duels. The other effect is that when she uses a positional, it grants her and her ally a buff that nullifies foes' bonuses, which can give Lucina a big stat advantage over her enemies. Before the introduction of arcane weapons, Winter Zephiel was essentially a non-existent unit, but now he is arguably one of the best save units in the entire game. This is largely due to the power of the arcane weapon itself, but also Winter Zephiel's optimized stat line. Our next sword armor is going to be Arden. Now the reason Arden is double S tier is due to his extremely high HP and defense stat. The combination of these two actually allow him to survive Duochrome without using Spallen's Shield, which is a big deal as that is one of the most important matchups in the game. Arden is easily one of the best, if not the best, free-to-play save unit in the game, which is saying a lot. Our last hero in double S tier is going to be Manuela. Manuela is fast, and that's a big upside when you consider the power of Rearm Lift's arcane weapon. This allows Manuela to have all the powerful effects needed to be a save armor, while also having the speed to deny even null follow-up units from their doubles in some situations. Overall, this makes Manuela a fantastic save unit, especially when you consider she's a 4-star seasonal. We have finally reached triple S tier, and these are the 4 best far save units in the game in my opinion. These are some of the most powerful units in the entire game, especially when you consider the meta has been revolving around far save for a long time now. First up, we have the Lion King himself, Mufasa. Mufasa was lucky enough to dodge the distant counter Refine curse, and instead got a ridiculous Refine. First of all, Mufasa's weapon can grant him up to 19 attack, defense, and resistance, and even 4 speed. His weapon also offers a massive 70% damage reduction against the foe's follow-up attacks and AoE specials. This is extremely meta relevant, as AoE specials have taken over the Summoner Duels meta due to the prevalence of Duo Thor and Harmonic Sonya. He also has a dual phase guaranteed follow-up attack and a conditional distant counter. This means that Mufasa can easily kill opponents, and his skills can be very flexible as he doesn't need to run distant counter in his A slot. Now, the major downside is keeping Mufasa transformed obviously, which makes him more difficult to use than your other typical save units who are just plug and play. The funny thing is, even if Mufasa isn't transformed, he's still one of the best save tanks in the game, as he's essentially a Halloween Myr with some upsides. Well, this probably isn't a surprise to anyone, but here is the king of the meta himself, Brave Hector. Brave Hector has been a meta-defining hero for over 2 years. Somehow he has found a way to survive, even with IS throwing out countless meta green threats. Brave Hector's Refine is just ridiculous, and it essentially grants him everything he could possibly want as a far safe tank. The only real downside to Hector is his less than optimized stat line, but even so, Brave Hector continues to be a meta warping threat, that has to be considered whenever you build your team. So what happens when you take Brave Hector but make him into a female dragon? Well, you get one of the best units in the game. Ascendant Thune has all the major powerful effects Brave Hector has, but trades a guaranteed follow-up attack for adaptive damage and armor effectiveness. One of the biggest advantages that Thune has over Hector has to be her updated, optimized stat line, which helps a ton against AoE specials. Also, her status as a dragon makes her immune to wind sweep effects that can be problematic for Brave Hector. Thune is just a fantastic option and definitely worth every single orb. Our final unit in SSS tier is gonna be Summer Altina. Summer Edelgard, right? Summer Edelgard has proven to be problematically powerful. She has an optimized stat line that lets her often ignore AoE specials entirely. She has dual phase Brave weapon with full might and special cooldown, allowing her to run powerful specials or even recharge defensive specials like Aegis easily. She also has a massive attack stat that lets her slice through opponents, often not even giving them a chance to get their follow-up attacks. Summer Edelgard is just one of those powerful units that can be difficult to take down, especially with how flexible her build can be. She definitely lives up to the expectation of an Altina ult. With that, my far-safe tier list is complete. All 86 armored heroes ranked from SSS down to D. One major thing to consider is with the introduction of arcane weapons, this list can fluctuate over time. I expect to see lance and axe units in particular rise in the ranks as arcane weapons are released for them. So even if one of your favorites ranked lowly here, it doesn't mean they will always be that low. Now I'd love to hear from you. Do you think my rankings were correct, or would you move some heroes around? Which farm save tank is your favorite, and who do you use the most? Make sure to drop a comment down below letting me know. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and keeps the content coming out. This has been Oblivion, and I'll catch you all later with more fine heroes.